Welcome, everybody. My name is Richard Ledbeater, and I'm the State Government Industry Manager for Esri. We're happy here to talk today about our Esri redistricting and redistricting in general. The idea today is to introduce you to Esri's product for redistricting, and today's agenda will be covering a number of items. Today I'll be presenting along with Nick. Nick is a consultant for the state and local government consulting practice for Esri. Today's agenda, we're going to be covering introductions. Why Esri redistricting? There's a reason why we created this solution. An overview of the redistricting solution itself, and of course we'll be demonstrating the product, giving an example, and then hopefully answering questions toward the end. This is myself, and Nick, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure thing. Thanks, everyone. Yep, I've been working on the state and local government consulting team here, and I've been in charge of the subject matter expert for elections and redistricting, and especially our Esri redistricting product.
All right, and I've been working for Esri for 21 years now. I've been covering state government as a focus area, and a lot of my attention has been toward the administrative side of state government, especially elections, redistricting, of course, and other areas. So some history, some context. Technology has been used in redistricting since the 1980s. It is the reason the DIME and TIGER files were created from the U.S. Census Bureau to help facilitate better understanding of the redistricting process and better apportionment of the population into congressional and state districts. The 1980s and 90s were the year of the mainframe, and these were big, large machines. This is actually a photo of a redistricting center from the 80s. And you can see how cumbersome it was. In the 80s and 90s, you typically had less than 10 scenarios. The ability to create them were quite onerous, highly constrained. So you had a few options to deal with. As we peaked through the 90s, we had more Agile Tools, if you want to call it Tektronix Agile. You had the ability to make a few dozen scenarios. As we got to the 2000s, we had PCs, and with PCs came the ability to have software. It was cumbersome still, but it was affordable to people who were serious about redistricting. You could go to a consumer level computer, load up the data from the Census Bureau, load software on the desktop itself, and there we started to see several dozen scenarios in each state. Being options being provided. In 2010, the PCs were the main horse, the main driver of redistricting, and you were able to create hundreds of scenarios. Also in 2010, Esri came along and decided to test whether we could do redistricting within a web browser. Again, a serious commitment, but still the ability to do redistricting, all of the functions, make legitimate plans, was available through a browser, and I'll call that almost a consumer level. This is a slide that I used in 2005 to help explain where redistricting, where technology was going that would be used for redistricting was going. It was a new technology movement in that the web was becoming a viable platform for GIS. It wasn't quite understood. Electronic payments, banking were relatively new. The iPhone was out there, but still we were just entering the phase of real activity, real capability through a web browser. Describing this technology, that Microsoft was now not going to deliver software on CDs. Esri was scheduled to do the same in the next 2 years, and in explaining this to a group of legislature, you would like to have I felt like I was committing anarchy. They were not happy with this. They wanted their trusted environments. They wanted the closed silo experience of redistricting. They didn't trust the openness. And it was this that caused me to focus inside of Esri the ability to take the tools of redistricting and put them on the web. It was that openness that I thought was the cure for gerrymandering. It was the ability to share the environment, to share the process, to share the tools and the data that could help lance the boil of gerrymandering. Put it out in the open, allow people to understand what the process is. Increase collaboration. That was my goal. Typically, Esri relied on our business partners up until 2010. And I realized that we had to be a leader here. We had to step out, see if we could create some transparency of the process. And these are two very old slides, but WebGIS hadn't been named yet. And that's what we were doing. We were putting data out on the web. We were putting data services. We were allowing people to publish both publicly and privately the outcomes of their scenarios and present those cases. And we'll talk about a case study at the end of this talk. But with that, I would like to transfer over to Nick, and Nick's going to guide you through a technical explanation and a demo.
Thanks, Rich. And I want to take a look at now from where the history that Rich just went over into where we are right now with our product Esri Redistricting. You can see here there's a example of Esri Redistricting in action. We really wanted to look at the entire process, the entire redistricting process, and try and find a solution that would not only fit into the ArcGIS platform, but also fit some of the gaps that have been seen traditionally between the major players within the redistricting process for states and local governments. So we have, as you see here, the three main groups that we've been looking at. There's the GIS professionals and the redistricting plan creation professionals who are using professional software, GIS software, redistricting software to create the plans with input from the legislatures. There's the public who wants to have their say and give input to these plans, but doesn't really know much about the process. It's pretty opaque to them. And then there's the legislatures and their staff who are responsible for running this entire process with all the pressures that come with legislative and judicial audits of the entire redistricting process, and the final plans will be made, as well as the organization between the professionals and the public and their own staff in order to get these plans out. Esri Redistricting is a web-based application that helps to bridge the gap between these groups. It's a way for professionals to use their GIS software, such as the ArcGIS or other redistricting software platforms, and input their plans into the Esri Redistricting environment. It allows the public to be able to not only give input, but create their own plans for submission in this environment as well. And then finally, legislatures will have much more control over the process, including having the security of knowing that they have the plans protected within their infrastructure. They get to give out access in the form of roles and groups to the public and these GIS professionals, and they'll be able to keep a more organized process moving forward that gives transparency to the public and still allows for the professional input from the GIS professionals who traditionally do these consulting plans. A quick product overview. Esri Redistricting is web-based, although it is built on a software stack which includes ArcGIS Server, Workflow Manager, and we've now moved from the Flex-based application from the 2010 census. Over the past few years, we've been working to incorporate feedback from that and have moved into a JavaScript-based web application that is accessible from the web. No applications need to be downloaded to create plans. We also have a set of features here, which I'm going to go over during our demonstration as well, but we have looked at the entire redistricting process from the beginning of the plan creation and editing and the initial data that needs to be put into the system for people to create these plans, all the way through reporting and analytics and sharing and collaboration to finally submitting plans and passing that off to the legislature so that they can move forward through their legislative process with solid, complete plans that have been checked for common pitfalls compared to their legislative requirements. When we say this is based on the ArcGIS platform, that's a huge moving forward. That's a huge way that you can start to collaborate between your redistricting applications and software that you have deployed and your existing ArcGIS and Esri applications and platform. Since this is going to be through the web browser, there will be no applications that need to be downloaded, which means easier collaboration with the public and with members of the staff. And it's also going to reduce the cost for onboarding since it will utilize your platform for parts of your legislative process. So it makes it a much more centralized and cost-effective way to provide access to citizens to this redistricting process and open up and create a more transparent process for them. Looking at the data that comes with this system, we have, by default, our data includes US Census data, the PL 94171 data, and that is going to be data that meets the requirements that we've worked with the Department of Justice on for redistricting efforts. It's also going to have access to our ArcGIS online data, including our base maps and other demographic data available through ArcGIS Online. And finally, with custom deployments, you'll be able to have access to your own data. We've seen data additions from just several data sets to several hundred data sets. And since the legislative requirements differ from state to state and county to county, it's an important point that you can get the custom data you need to meet your own legislative requirements in the system, as well as that general data needed from the US Census data. We also, on the right here, you can see we have geography hierarchies supported. Then that can also include your own custom hierarchies, and supported geographies by default are at the state, county, and then census designated city or town areas for redistricting plans. A quick look at those features, and we're about to dive into a demo so I can show these, but we've really tried to hit not only all of the steps of plan creation, but also plan and user management within this process. Let's open up the application here so we can dive a little bit deeper into these. We'll start here with a brand new plan. So you'll see right when you open this up and log in, this is going to be the open plan screen. We can look through the plans that we've created here already, the plans that have been shared to everyone within the organization, and your recent plans. This is where we can start to make some folders, maybe if you want to separate those out, or look into your groups and the plans that are shared within the groups that have been made here. The account I'm signed in with right now is an administer account. So this is going to be the accounts that have all of the features available here, but the back end of this allows for user management, which is going to allow for custom roles. So any of the features here can be restricted to your own custom roles, which means that your GIS professionals working in this environment and your legislative staff will be able to have different features and more abilities than, say, a public account would have. Let's create a plan. We'll start right from scratch. On this screen, you'll see we'll input our number of districts, our maximum deviation. We'll be able to select the census year data. Currently, we have the years 2000 and 2010 in here. And as soon as that 2020 data comes out from the census, we'll have that, which should be in early 2021. We'll have that as soon as the states have it, and we'll be getting into our system. So we'll have another choice there for 2020. Let's select a state here. We'll start with Colorado. You'll see you can designate that data hierarchy here as well after picking the state. This is a screen where you're able to pick the colors. And in here, you'll see this is our demographics section. So you'll be able to select the demographics that you want to display in this. We're going to go through and select a couple with on the sum versus the percent. This is a selection of some of the most popular demographics here. And with your own data, there's also the option to go in and create custom variables as well. So you'll see this is a look at the data on the back end that are in the current demographics, just in the vanilla default version. And you would be able to go in here and not only pick new variables, but you'd also be able to start to create your own. You could see what all of these are, minus maybe the white non-Hispanic population, for example, and you'll be able to create your own variables in here so you can see that when you're redistricting as well. Let's cancel this and we'll go back. So we've selected a few variables here, and you see we'll hit done. This is going to start to pull up that Colorado state map and pull up those variables that I selected. This process, the geographies that are in here are also customizable, and for a custom on-premise deployment, you can have your own geographies in here as well as your own data sets by default that you want to load up, and your demographics. By the way, if any of you have any questions during this demo, please feel free to send them in, and Rich can call them out and he can stop me. And I'd really like this to flow as a discussion if you guys have any questions on the features that are going to be displayed here. So you'll see on the bottom here, we have this is our district statistics window docked at the bottom here. And this is really going to be one of the central parts of creating your plans. You'll see that it has a list of all of the districts that I've added in here. And some of the columns are the total population within that area. You'll see they're all in the unassigned right now, or that light blue. The target deviation. And then here are those 4 custom demographics variables that I selected. Now, if I wanted to modify this at all or swap this, I could go into this area here and I could start to change some of this. I could change names. I could change the target values. And I could also change the number of districts that we're aiming for. And you see it'll change this target mean here, which is what we're going to be aiming for within this application. So up here on the top ribbon, you'll see it's laid out in a way that's looking for an intuitive process throughout the redistricting process. We have starting out with just the default file options: open, save, print. You're able to import and export your plans from here, which can then be consumed by others if you send them out to others. Then as we move on, we see this Learn tab here. This is just a HTML, CSS web page, which we've had clients in the past customize to reflect their legislative requirements. So this is a great way to give a quick overview to the people who are going to be using this platform on how to use it and your own unique legislative requirements that need to be considered when using it. Then as we move into the Create tab, this is the main tab for the plan creation itself. We'll start just by doing some selections. So you see there's a couple ways to select this. You can select by point, you can drag by rectangle or by polygon or polyline. So we're going to just do a polygon selection. We'll select District 1 here, and we're just going to grab a couple of these counties. You'll see we're zoomed in at the county level now, and this application gives you the ability to go in very granular right down to the block level when you're making these plans. So we picked up about 70,000. Let's just pick this whole area for District 1 here. We'll create a few areas, and I'll demonstrate how these tools work. Here's the polygon. The rectangle is going to be pretty intuitive. Just creates the rectangle. And then the polyline is a good option for when you start to get weird nooks and crannies like this. You'll be able to make unequal shaped districts. So we've got a few districts running here, and I'm going to start zooming in. You can use these zoom in buttons here or here up in the top, or just scroll in. And you'll see as we zoom in, if you take a look at this zoom scale level, we've now passed the county level and we're now into the tract level. You'll see it's starting to get much more granular as we go in. And as we continue to zoom in, it's going to get more and more granular all the way down to the block level. Let's take this over to the block level just so you can see how detailed these plans can get. Here it is at the block level, basically neighborhood by neighborhood in some areas. And if you need, for some reason, to go back to the block group at this zoom level, you can also adjust these sliders. So you'll be able to jump in and out of these different levels at any zoom level. Once you're in this level, you can continue to select. You can continue to compare these areas based on some themes that we have already built in. Not only can you change the base map of this, like I mentioned before, to some of our ArcGIS Online default base maps. We'll select the light gray canvas, for example. And we'll also display just the lines for now, so we can see in between the districts. So you'll see now we just have these borders of the districts in here, and we're going to want to zoom out to the block group level for a second, and let's add some of our themes in here. We have a button here for themes, which is going to bring some predefined or configurable themes based on the demographics data that you have within this. So this is going to be all of the default data that I showed earlier. With predefined themes, it's a selection of our most popular themes. So let's just select one of these themes for now, just so we can see. You'll see it'll start to highlight some areas that you should be looking out for when you're creating your plans, and this will be good for when you're checking against some of your legislative requirements on some of these themes. If you have themes that you want to use that aren't some of these most popular themes, we can come back in here and go to Configurable Themes. And this is going to give you access to all those demographic variables that we saw before, so you can create your own themes through here. And this includes some more advanced options on this as well, such as how many breaks are going to be in here and the method that is being created for these themes. Additionally, with the theme overlays, you can also overlay some content from ArcGIS Online or GIS services that exist already within ArcGIS. So this is where you can put in, for example, we can search for maybe some Colorado data sets that are going to be in here on ArcGIS Online, or we can search for just the URL itself right to the REST endpoint of the feature service. This panel that popped out also gives you a look at some of the layers that are on here, as well as a map legend for the maps that you've put up and the themes that are currently on the page. Let's zoom back out and come back to some of the selection tools. So we have some of these outlined here. If we come over to this light bulb up here in our selection tools, we're going to toggle our two-factor selection. So let's turn off this display line so we can see this a little better. If we want to start moving some over from District 1 here into District 2, we can turn on that two-factor selection and then just select like we normally would. And you'll see it hasn't changed already, it's just highlighted these areas that we've selected. And if we come over here down to the bottom and select proposed on our district statistics window, you'll see that this is going to give you all of the changes that are going to occur with your totals and then those targeted demographics that you selected. So this will give you a good view of what your change is going to be before you select it. And then if you're okay with this change, you can right click and assign selections here, and that's going to pull those selections in. I was on District 4 for that one.
Nick?
Oh, yes.
Can I interrupt you for a minute to ask a question? Question comes from Shelby Johnson. Do you have the functionality to import existing districts from 2010 so you can evaluate their variance against 2020?
Yes. So we have the ability. You'll have the ability to have, since the files that this plans are in are block equivalency format, any block equivalency file will be able to be imported into this, and that's whether you've made it on the ArcGIS platform or other redistricting software platforms as well. So you will be able to bring those in, and we do have features in our, which I'll get to in a little bit, which can help you compare plans to previous plans. So that'll be a very helpful tool if you're looking to compare your 2010 plans to your 2020 plans.
Perfect.
Thanks, Shelby.
Thanks.
I will turn two-factor off, and let's move on from this plan here into a plan that I've worked on a little bit earlier. We'll see this. We have this main plan, and it's mostly around even. So we want to dive into the review process for these plans. So if I come over to this next tab here, review, you'll see there's a few options for on-screen charts, and these are charts that are going to be live edited. So as you edit, these charts will reflect the edits that you've made. So we have this one, which is a plan histogram. We also have a plan distribution pie chart, and you can select the demographics that you've chosen during that as well. And also the district distribution, which will give you a look into the districts based on the categories that you selected. But we also have some common tests in here in our analysis section. This compactness test is going to give you a instant look at some of the most popular compactness tests and how each of your districts holds up to those. And if you wanted to dive in with a little more reports, we also have a compactness report that can be generated along with other common reports that we've put together while working closely with the Department of Justice on what is needed for reporting for these plans. For example, let's select the population summary here up top. You can select which fields are going in here. It's going to be pulling in the most common fields now, but I could come through and customize this with any of the demographics that I have in this system. And you can see I can email this report out, or I could download this as a PDF, Excel, or HTML file. So let's just download a PDF for now. You'll see the PDF has appeared down here. And if I open that up, we have an instantly generated report that gives us an overview of that population summary. These reports are also customizable with custom deployments as well. So if there are specific reports you have, we can work with you to get those reports in here as well. And as I move back, you'll see there's also a check integrity button on this. So let's select that check integrity. This is going to run through a series of tests that hit some of the most common pitfalls for these. We have our dual assignment check, population summary, district count, maximum deviation, null assignment to make sure that it's all out of the unassigned, and connectivity check to make sure that all of the districts are contiguous. You'll see that everything is passed except the connectivity check. So if I select the details here, it's going to pop up with the district that's the problem child for this plan and the number of parts that the district has been split into. So since this is 2 parts, that means that there's one district outlying somewhere that needs to be added back into District 11 or absorbed into one of the other districts. So if I hit next part here, it'll first zoom in on the largest part, which is going to be District 11 itself. And then hitting next part again is going to take me into, you'll see there is a very small sliver, if I zoom out, very tiny sliver in District 9 that is still District 11. So I can remedy this by coming down to the District 9 and selecting it. And now that sliver has been checked. So if I refresh this, now the discontiguous districts is gone. I can close this. It's going to run those integrity tests again to make sure that we've covered all our bases here. And you'll see that we have all check marks now. So that's a great way to catch some of those slivers during the process when you're moving between these block group, track, county level. It's easy sometimes to lose some of those smaller areas at the block level when looking at a larger overall view of this. Once we've gotten our plan to a place where we're comfortable with it, it's time to move into collaborating with others to make sure that others within our group or whomever we're working with also gets their input in our plans. So we can review this plan as compared to other people's plans that are stored in groups. So groups look like this. I'll jump over to this manage group section. This is a feature that can be turned off, so only administrators can have access to this, but we see that in our group names, we have a main redistricting group in here with members. Now, we can create a new group here or manage users within the selected group, and we can add in new users to this group. So if I'm going to search in here, it's going to search by the username, and then we'll be able to send out invitations to these different users, which then they will accept and will be able to collaborate with us on these plans that are stored within this group. I'm going to share this plan to that main redistricting group that I just saw. You could share it with everyone in this organization, which would make it a public plan within the organization, or you can share to just groups themselves, and you can select if it's going to be read-only access or read-write access. We'll do read-write access for this one. Once you've shared the plan, others can work on it. Others can add comments through this comment section. I'll add a quick comment in there. And you can also additionally, in this review tabs, add some map notes. So you can draw lines, you can add some text into areas that you might want to draw attention to with others in the group. Let's go back to a default zoom level on this. Additionally, you have the ability to look at the access log for these maps. So you'll see, here's all the times that I've opened this up, not only editing the maps and saving it, but also just opening it in a default. Let's jump back to this. And finally, we have some other ways to publish out to the community. We have the ability to publish into a map package, publish a KML file, and then publish to a feature layer into ArcGIS Online. And this is really where it's going to bring it into that ArcGIS platform. You'll be able to publish as a feature layer and then consume that feature layer in some of our other applications, such as Esri Story Maps and Web App Builder. And that's where we see a lot of opportunity with collaborating with the public and crowdsourcing out opinions on the potential maps that you have. You'll also be able to bring it in for deeper analysis into applications such as ArcGIS Insights. And when this plan is complete and everyone on your group has agreed, you've come to a consensus on this using some of our tools such as our plan comparison, where you can open up additional plans and compare and even merge changes to get to the best plan possible between the group. You'll be able to come over to this final tab, Submit. And once you select this Submit button, this is going to run one final integrity check. So it's going to make sure that you're hitting all of those common pitfalls, you're avoiding all of those common pitfalls. And once you select OK, you'll be able to add in some more information here. You'll be able to attach files in our share, so you can attach those reports and those graphs that you generated earlier and explain your plan objectives. And once you submit this plan, it can no longer be edited. And that's going to go to the group within the legislative staff or legislative committee that will then review those plans as it moves forward. Jumping back to the presentation, this is a look at the deployment options for this application. The web app you saw is going to be consistent within all of these. These are all looking at how on the back end this application is going to be organized and stored. So we have our software as a service subscription model, which is going to be accessed from your ArcGIS Online accounts, purchased through ArcGIS Marketplace Online. And that's going to be a per user, per year pricing. And it'll have no custom features or data. It'll use the data that you have existing within there for demographics, although you'll still be able to bring in your own data from ArcGIS Online to overlay as a visual aid during these planning process, and you'll be able to export in as a feature service into your ArcGIS Online organization. If you're looking for more custom configuration, we have our next two offerings, which is managed services and on-premise. And the difference between these two is that you will have all hosting components are managed by Esri in our Esri Managed Cloud Services versus on-premise. This is going to be installed behind the organization's firewall, so on your own infrastructure, whether that be your own hardware on-premise or your own cloud deployment. And both of these will be able to have custom data packs, work with custom reports, and the difference is who's hosting the components, Esri or your organization. I'm going to turn it back over to Rich now.
While on the last two configurations, do you have any thoughts on what people prefer? What's the most common preference?
Yeah, that's that depends on the circumstances, I would say, that your organization's in. If you're going to be doing heavy public access to the application, we've seen a lot of people default to the managed services at first, and some people will start out with the managed services and then slowly shift into the on-premise deployment. So there's also the ability of switching between those two as well. It's really comes down to the needs of the organization and how much exposure you're going to be having to the public. on this. And we've also, if you have a smaller team who only needs the default functions, maybe 1 to 2 people, that's where that software as a service subscription comes in, where they are going to be using that default census data to run tests or create new plans. If you have a larger team, or you're going to be expanding this access out to groups of 15, 20 people that are going to be using this every day for long periods during the redistricting process, that's where that managed services and on-premise come in, as well as if you need custom layers. We've dealt with anything from a few custom layers added in to one county had several hundred custom layers, 20 years of election data that was a legislative requirement to be accessed during this redistricting process. So if you're looking for custom, that would be those final 2. And between the 2, it's depending on, I would say, your need for widespread public access.
All right. Well, another question: what kind of or how much custom data can I use?
Yeah, and like I mentioned before, we've had very different approaches to that. Some people's legislative requirements are going to require them to have many layers, and since all of that demographic data in block equivalency format will be consumed in the same way in this application, you could have several hundred layers, or you could have access to only a couple additional ones, or just stick with the census PL data.
Yeah, and a lot of that criteria is defined in each state's constitution.
Exactly.
How does this relate to Esri's districting for ArcGIS tool, which is an add-on to ArcMap?
That's true. Some of you may be familiar with our districting for ArcGIS add-on for ArcMap, and that is a free extension, which we suggest to people doing what I would describe as low-lift redistricting, so not full states, but potentially counties, or maybe use cases outside of traditional redistricting, such as planning districts for schools or police precincts. That's where the free add-on districting for ArcGIS would come into play. This Esri redistricting application is going to be helpful in more traditional state and local redistricting efforts.
Great.
Especially where you need collaboration.
Thanks for that.
No problem.
That's it for the questions submitted by the users. So I wanted to discuss 2 resources right off the bat. We have a case study involving Utah and their experience in 2011 with using public redistricting. They initially saw a demonstration of our product late in the process, and the committee decided to open up the process to citizens within Utah so that they can create their own statewide redistricting plans and create a discussion outside of the legislature. In my opinion, it was kind of the perfect way, it was kind of the perfect citizen engagement experience. Here you are giving them the same data and the same tools as the legislature is exposed to, and they have the chance to experience what this process is and demystify it. I think that was one of the biggest benefits that I took away from their story, that it demystified the process and that it wasn't this black box experience, that they could see the data, that they could start making their own plan. And I think one of the things they learned, the citizens learned, was you can't start with a parochial view of my neighborhood. Citizens who started that way, saying, here's my city, I want it whole, they had trouble completing a statewide plan and meeting all of the criteria. So they instantly found out that compromise was part of the process. And importantly, the journalists and the media in the state experienced as well. There were 1,000 requests for logons to their system, and from that they received 300 plus plans submitted by citizens, media, academics, most within the state, but some externally. Of those 270 plus plans met all the criteria. So they were legitimate plans that could be reviewed. And then going around with their public meetings about redistricting, they found that somebody was always in the audience that had done this process, and they could start the discussion from there. And as the staff conveyed to me, that they actually found this process enjoyable, where before it was kind of a labor and they were never quite civil meetings, and they were kind of hostile. In fact, they found that this process eased that tension, and citizens ultimately gained trust in the process, that there wasn't any nefarious activities with redistricting, that it was a hard process, and they appreciated the process that it created. So we have this case study to that URL, and finally we've created some learn lessons. Our Learn site has a number of tools, free web-based training, and we've just recently published a lesson using this solution up on the website, and you can see the Learn-Redistricting link on this slide. It provides you a 30-day trial, a 60-day trial of the software, of the SaaS software, where you can go in, walk through a scenario. We built it around the state of Maryland just because it was the smallest state that had multiple districts that you could play around with. And the scenario is meant to get your fingers wet, to get you into the product, but get you into the problems associated with redistricting. The lesson doesn't have you complete a plan, but the ability to do that is there. A lot of universities and government classes have started looking at this tool and will be using it in their next semester's government classes. And with that, we still have a little bit of time for questions. If there's any questions, you can type into the box, raise your hand and do so, and we'll try to get them answered. If seeing no questions, we'll just close here. And this is my email, and this is Nick's email. If you have any questions, please email us. We'll be glad to answer them, call you back if needed, and explain what we have here in more depth. Nick, any last thoughts?
No, thank you so much, everyone, for attending. And yeah, please feel free to email us, and we could answer any more of your questions that you have with the redistricting product team.
All right, with that, we'll be closing out, and thank you very much for your time.